Outlaw Nation, Chapter 8. Roger sat in the barn loft, looking out the open hay door and drinking his coffee. He smoked his hand-rolled cigarette and watched as the sun rose slowly from behind the eastern horizon. It was a cool autumn morning, and when the sun rose, it quickly started to vaporize the morning dew off the fields behind the barn. Roger got little sleep and rose early every morning, a habit he picked up in his time with the Corps. He was at peace here. He felt a sense of belonging that he had never previously known. After he finished his coffee and his smoke, he walked down to the bar and joined the others at their table, where they were eating a hearty breakfast. Buddy signaled over to Butch, the man behind the grill, and he brought a plate of bacon and eggs and fried potatoes over and placed it in front of Roger. Roger thanked him, and he nodded and went back to the kitchen. He looked at Buddy and said, "Just give a holler if you need anything else, brother," before he disappeared into the kitchen. So far, the only club members Roger had met were Buddy, Hammer, and Tiny, who was now deceased. He had also met Butch, the bartender and barbecue chef. Butch was not a member of the club. He was the owner of the bar and the building. He was a childhood friend of Buddy's. Buddy trusted him completely, and Butch rented Buddy the garage out back. The garage and the bar became a home for the club. The club was still officially in its infancy, with just 5 members now that Tiny was gone. Buddy was the club president. Hammer was his sergeant-at-arms. The 3 members that Roger had not yet met were out of town on club business and due back sometime today, Buddy informed Roger. Among them were Lee, the club's vice president, and 2 full-patch members, Billy the Kid Bennett and JT. All were former military, and all had seen combat in Vietnam. Lee and Hammer had been in Buddy's unit in the Marine Corps. The 3 of them served together and started the club together when they returned home. Bennett was a door gunner on a Huey gunship helicopter. He met Buddy and Lee while serving in Vietnam. He rotated out 6 months after they did and joined them right away when he got home. JT joined them after the end of his second tour a year ago. He had just been patched in from a prospect to a full member. Shortly after they finished their breakfast, Roger heard a sound that was rapidly becoming familiar to him, the sound of a roaring V-twin motor. This one had a particularly loud exhaust on it. He walked over and looked out the window to see 3 Harleys roll into the lot and out back where the garage was located. Buddy and Hammer headed for the back door. Buddy looked over at Roger and told him to stay in the bar until he called for him. Roger nodded and went back to stocking the beer cooler behind the bar. Butch walked out of the kitchen, placed a large pot of sauce on the flat-top grill to simmer. Roger said, "Looks like the rest of the guys are back." Butch nodded and said, "Looks like." He took a bowl off the shelf and ladled a bit of sauce into the bowl. He put a teaspoon in it and slid it to Roger. "Taste this and tell me what you think." Roger tasted it and said, "Pretty good, bro." Butch stuck his spoon into the bowl and took a taste himself. "Needs a little kick, though, don't you think?" Roger just shrugged. Butch reached up into a bowl on the shelf and took out 4 cayenne peppers that had been dried. He cut them into little pieces and added them to the sauce. He put the lid back on the large pot to let it continue to simmer. He looked over at Roger to see him watching out the window toward the back lot. "Don't worry, brother. Buddy'll call you out there soon enough. He had to give the other guys a heads up about you prospecting with the club. It's a little unorthodox, the way he signed you on. Usually a potential prospect is brought to the table for the entire club to vote on, for acceptance or rejection. The way the club operates is basically a democracy, but Really, it's Buddy's club. He started it with Lee and Hammer. It was his idea, his vision. If he brought you to the table as a potential prospect, he would make it clear that he wanted you, and nobody would oppose that. Not unless one of them had a problem with you personally, like bad history or such. But in your case, it's pretty clear cut. None of these guys have ever met you, so no bad blood there. Buddy wants you in, so the vote is really just a formality. Kind of moot at this point, since you're already wearing the prospect cut. These guys are used to Buddy being Buddy. Nobody's going to impose you, but he still has to walk the line of balance. The easier thing would have been for him to wait until they got back and brought you up for a vote at the next meeting. That would have been much cleaner, but Buddy Tanner has never been one to do things the easy way. He chuckled and slapped Roger on the back. You got nothing to worry about, bro. Of course, unless one of them does oppose you, the vote has to be unanimous. And Buddy took a huge chance using you for that little run up to the state line the other night. I saw the news about the trooper being held at gunpoint. I figured it was you guys. He paused briefly and said, "Don't answer. I don't need to know the details." Buddy using you on that op was against club rules. Giving a non-member that level of exposure is unheard of. I know it couldn't be avoided. That op had to happen at that time. And with the other members away, and Buddy being short-handed, he made a call to break protocol to include you. He didn't have a choice, really. But now, if the club doesn't vote you in to prospect for some reason, they can't just let you walk. Not with the knowledge that you now have of those events of the other night. Roger stared at Butch. But Buddy was ready to let me walk yesterday, if I chose not to take the cut when he gave it to me. Was that a lie? A setup? No, said Butch. I don't think so. Buddy's a pretty straight shooter. If he offered to let you walk away, I believe that he would have done just that. But you chose not to walk away, so now it's going to the club. I can promise you one thing. What you know about their operation, they can't let you walk away. They're either going to accept you or they're going to kill you. Roger walked over and looked out the front window. He looked at the empty road, which stretched endlessly in both directions. His bike was out back, and he knew if he made a break for it that he would be dead before he cleared the lot. Besides that, he didn't want to go. Even now, with what he faced, he did not want to leave this place, these people. Roger walked over and sat at the bar. He rolled a smoke and ordered a cold beer. When Butch placed the beer in front of him, he put his hand on Roger's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, R. You got like a 90% chance of this thing going your way by my estimation. Buddy will get you through the vote." Roger smirked. "You can't get those odds in Vegas, can you?" Butch placed a shot glass on the bar in front of Roger and poured a shot of Irish whiskey into it. Roger downed the shot in one gulp, slammed the glass down on the bar, just as Buddy Tanner walked through the back door. Roger looked over at a solemn Buddy who just said, "Roger, time for you to meet the rest of the guys." He stepped aside to let Roger pass through the door in front of him. He glanced over at Butch, who was looking back at him. Buddy just looked away and followed Roger out the door.